The choice of pro-business Friedrich Merz, a judge, lawyer, and chairman of BlackRock Germany's supervisory board, looks ideal for Germany, as indeed the economy is at the forefront of what voters are concerned with. The euro strengthened and German stock futures rose as Germany's pro-business Conservative Party came in first in the national election as markets expected. Hello, this is Bode Ososami on Global Business Insights, where we look closer at the main business headlines. Today, as we look at leadership models, our analysis focuses on how pro-business leaders have fared in different environments. But first, some of the other headlines. In Nigeria, the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee is holding this week, starting today, a public hearing on the tax reform bills by the National Assembly. The Assembly will consider the discussions before the Senate on the 24th and 25th, while the House of Representatives will be on 26th to 28th. Analysts continue to commend the boldness and persistence of this initiative, also noting the context that makes discussing taxes a painful conversation. Many believe the focus on reform can be staged, first focusing on improving compliance and relieving tax burdens where it can, on lower earning tiers and helping business. More controversial issues like sharing of revenues can also be staged to be much more easier to digest, given the heightened distrust and potential resistance. Still, most reactions on the reform have been positive. China has unveiled the State Council's annual Rural Policy Blueprint for 2025 on Sunday, outlining the priorities for further deepening rural reforms and highlights also further boosting the supply of key agricultural products to safeguard grain security. The European Union's digital chief last week confirmed a proposal of at least 5 sets of legislation this year to spur investment and simplify regulation on companies, including in the field of artificial intelligence. Also, the European Commission is cutting back the number of companies facing EU sustainability reporting requirements. This is as it faces pressure from EU member countries such as France to ease regulations, and also Mario Draghi, former European Central Bank president, who wants more business barriers addressed to make Europe more competitive. Brussels also said there was a positive momentum towards a compromise between Europe and the United States following talks in Washington seeking to avoid unnecessary pain and avert tariffs. Other highlights for this week: Nvidia's scheduled earnings will be released on Wednesday amid uncertainty on the artificial intelligence outlook. Home Depot, Lowe's, and Salesforce will also be reporting. On Friday, the Fed's preferred deflator, that's the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, is scheduled for release, and the Fed could get another signal on progress in fighting inflation. The PCEI is expected to show a slowdown to 2.6% from 2.8%. Revisions to US fourth quarter GDP, that's out on Thursday, after an initial reading that we had last month, which showed the U.S. economy grew at 2.3%. That's the annual rate, slightly lower than expectations. Also, we get Eurozone inflation and an update on Germany GDP growth in Q4 and other data releases that could also move markets. But to our deep dive as Germany chooses its next leader. Last year, the Atlantic Council in the US, IMF Managing Director Georgieva Kristalina said that the current decade could be remembered either for its turbulence, for tepid economic growth, or for transformation. All will depend on the leadership ability to deliver policies that could produce very different outcomes.
In a world of more frequent shocks and heightened uncertainty, we need good policies more than ever. Making the right policy choices will define the future of the world economy. It will define how this decade is remembered. Will it go down in history as the turbulent 20s, a time of disruptions and divergence in economic fortunes, or the tepid 20s, a time of slow growth and popular discontent, or the transformational 20s, a time of rapid technological advancements for the good of humanity?
In a polycrisis mode that Germany has found itself, citizens decided on a change in leadership. The situation may be more to be blamed on difficult contextual headwinds that Olaf Scholz could do little about. And the question now is, will Merz deliver transformational policies? Friedrich Merz, the pro-business head of the Christian Democratic Union and its sister party, the Christian Social Union, has emerged as the next chancellor as coalitions are still being organized. Merz is also to the center-right, distancing himself from the much younger and populist Alice Elisabeth Weidel, the chairwoman of the far-right Alternative for Germany AfD party, seen as a populist figure aggressively pushed by Elon Musk and social media. AfD has surged, however, to second place, defeating Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic Party, SPD, and the Greens. But to my theme on business persons as leaders in the present context, in which the economy has contracted not for 2 quarters but for 2 years, here comes Merz with the normal pro-business menu of income and corporate tax cuts, fewer subsidies and less regulation, social benefits reform, cutting bureaucracy, leaner, efficient government, support for innovation, startups and artificial intelligence, and boosting investment, among other policies. Still, critics say details are lacking. Business-like leaders do bring better focus on competitiveness, but can find themselves mired in untangling a thread of complex change resistance factors. At best, many will deliver what the IMF MD described as the tepid 20s, but the times call for transformational leaders, which is a rarer form of leadership that can deliver huge ambition, intensity, and speed. Merz has promised greater leadership from Germany in Europe to make Germany and Europe less dependent on the US and to ramp up support for Ukraine, also not ruling out future membership of NATO. Like I said, being pro-business and focused is not necessarily transformational, as many critics would want to see bolder vision, especially from leaders that are pro-business. Urgency and intensity and ambition is also not very obvious, according to what many have observed from Merz. Analysts report that, for example, he's targeting 2% GDP growth in the medium term, which is tepid at best. Still on the theme of business-like leaders, Trump is an example of business-like focus, but so far, even his best admirers see him as transactional, while his critics see for now only more turbulence, whether in Ukraine, Russia, or in the Middle East, or at home in America. Let's look elsewhere, this time Africa. Another pro-business leader is Nigeria's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has got rid of subsidies, is introducing tax reforms, converged the parallel and official markets, found a way to coerce the central bank to at least hold rates, perhaps ahead of kicking off an easing cycle as a rebased inflation hints at lower inflation. Oil production has started to climb back, refineries resurrecting from the grave. Dangote refineries has been helped to begin operations. True, a lot has been done in a short time, but inflation and interest rates are still way too high for normal economic growth. Electric supply still epileptic, corruption still thrives according to surveys, and the pains of more citizens dragged into poverty by higher cost of living has become almost unbearable. Some rightly argue that perhaps more time is needed for a fairer assessment. But for Africa, a transformational leadership is very critical to see the long-expected renaissance. African nations need to escape the trap of tepid growth to free their populations from poverty and underdevelopment. Bing AI Copilot has been trained to suggest that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, a country that has done well on most counts, is considered to be a transformational leader. It points to moves like self-reliant India, the demonetization of high-value currency notes in 2016, ability to connect with people through powerful public speaking, and a charismatic personality, and uncommon adaptability, even of late touting a Make India Great Again mantra. Yesterday, Germany chose its leader. We have to wait and see what style of leadership it gets and if it will turn the tides as a long to-do list waits for attention. Observers and indeed the International Monetary Fund will agree that transformational policies require time to fully bear the visible fruit. So we must give Trump, Tinubu, and Merz time. The vision, energy, and the satisfaction with low goals, intensity, involvement, and discipline of change navigation will provide hints of a leader on a transformational path. For Merz, pledging greater independence from the US will win the headlines, but if he does not address the immigration and economy, he will most likely lose the next election. The verdict on Olaf Scholz was very clear as he fell to a weak third place. Citizens will not bear pains and listen to excuses interminably. And the tough context, such as high energy prices and a global slowdown with less appetite for German cars and other manufacturers, high inflation eroding consumer appetite, are all valid. But results and how people feel matter more as illegal immigration and crime became thorns in the flesh of the Chancellor. Voter turnout in Germany's election reached its highest level since the country's reunification in 1990. According to the exit poll data, it suggested a turnout of about 84%. You cannot count on voters to patiently take the pain. I have to conclude the transformation DNA shows up not so much in the pro-business slant, but in the drive and ambition and ability to sell the vision, carrying the people along, plus of course the speed. Change models also suggest there could be turbulence and even a dip ahead of future transformation. On global markets, European stocks opened in broadly higher territory as traders cheered the results of the German federal election. Oil prices were lower in Asian trade as we saw a resumption of exports from Kurdistan's oil fields. Also, as investors awaited more clarity on talks to resolve Russia's war on Ukraine. Still in Asia, Singapore's headline inflation increased 1.2% year-on-year in January, down from a revised 1.5% in December. Asia stocks were mostly lower. Asia Pacific markets tracking a weak Friday on Wall Street as US economic data signals more uncertainty around the economy and inflation. All eyes on the personal consumption expenditure index coming out on Friday. Well, that's all we can take on this episode of Global Business Insights. Thanks for watching. This is Bode Oshosami.